Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to the Nonprofit Coach with Ted Hart. Since 2010, the most listened to radio show in the nonprofit sector dedicated to helping your charity succeed. It's no secret that combining online and offline techniques is the key to fundraising success, and practical nonprofit management advice is what you need. The Nonprofit Coach with Ted Hart is the perfect landing point to learn from top experts around the world who provide advice you can use. Ted Hart is without a doubt one of the foremost nonprofit thought leaders. Also a successful author, his books range from successful online fundraising to expert nonprofit management. Guests on the Nonprofit Coach are leaders in their field who share their insider tips and trade secrets in a conversational style both the experienced and novice will benefit from. Ted lectures around the world, but now he's here for you. From the latest in charity news, technology, fundraising, and social networking, Ted and his guests help you and your organization move to greater levels of efficiency and fundraising success. This is a live call-in show. Add your voice by calling 347-324-3080. After the show, you can find all our podcasts at tedhart.com. Click on the radio links. Don't forget to dial 347-324-3080. Now, welcome the host of the Nonprofit Coach, Ted Hart.
And welcome here to the latest edition of the Nonprofit Coach. Thank you for joining us today. We are also live over on Facebook. You can find us at facebook.com/Ted Hart. You can also email us your questions today at tedhart@tedhart.com. As always here on the Nonprofit Coach, we start with Page 1 News. And over here on Page 1, we have George Hamilton. George is coming to us live from CFRE International. George, welcome to the Nonprofit Coach, and bring us up to date with the CFRE Minute.
Thanks very much, Ted. Happy to be back. Well, really what we've got exciting to share with your listeners today is just a follow-up on something Eva spoke about last time we were on, which is the new CFRE online practice exam resource for people who are preparing to take the CFRE exam. That is now in the final testing phase, and it will launch on our website soon. So listeners should check the website probably over the next couple of weeks to see if that is up and available. I can also give some additional information about how it will work and what the cost structure will be, and it's very exciting. In terms of cost, it's going to work on a subscription basis, which means that you can purchase either a 1-month or a 3-month subscription to the practice exam, and then use it as much as you like during that subscription period, going back and forth and practicing different aspects of the exam, or you can take an entire 100-question exam that would cover every knowledge domain, or you have the option of simply testing yourself on each knowledge domain individually. So there's a lot of flexibility offered to the candidate for CFRE certification in terms of the types of practice exam they want to take, and the feedback from the service will allow people to track not just what questions they got wrong and what the correct answers are, but will allow them to see how they're doing in comparison to the knowledge domains covered on the exam, so that they can go back to the resource reading list and really polish their knowledge in those specific areas as they prepare to take the CFRE exam.
And I would imagine it can also help boost people's confidence. Maybe folks who are maybe feeling a little rusty in taking exams, it can maybe lower the stress level having the opportunity to take a practice exam in that format.
Exactly. And the fact that you can go back to it multiple times following review and retake a practice exam on a specific knowledge domain, or retake the whole practice exam, really allows people to get a measure of where they are in terms of readiness, go back to the resources, study a bit more, and then go back and get another measurement of, okay, am I ready now, kind of thing.
That's perfect. That's terrific. Coming into this is CAP America, or the Nonprofit Coach radio show. Last show here until our summer hiatus. We will come back live September 12th. So give us a little bit of a view over the next couple of months, since we will not have any live shows.
Okay. Well, we're nearing the end of the second CFRE exam testing window right now. That window will run through June 15th. Now, the deadline to apply to take the exam in that window is already passed, but I did want to let folks know that the third window of the year is a little bit earlier this year. The testing dates for CFRE exam window number 3 this year run from July 15th to September 15th. And the application deadline in order to test in that window is July 5th. So there is another testing window coming up soon, and a deadline by which folks would need to submit their CFRE application to test during that window, and that deadline again is July 5th.
And maybe if summer is a little bit slower for some offices, this is a particularly good time to prepare for exam.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's part of the reason that the exam committee and CFRE International decided to move that window a little bit earlier in the year, so it didn't start in August, which is prime vacation time. There's a bit of half of July available, as well as then extending halfway into September. So this is the second year we've had 4 testing windows of 2 months in duration to provide as many opportunities as possible for candidates to find a convenient time that works within their work and busy lives in terms of being able to find a time to write the exam and go ahead and achieve that certification.
Right. Terrific. Well, George, thank you for your updates from CFRE International with the CFRE Minute, and we look forward to having you and your colleagues back after summer when we come back live in September.
Great. Thanks for having us, Ted. Have a great summer.
Thank you. Have a great summer. Exactly. Next up here on the Nonprofit Coach is page 2. Mark Sutton is Chief Marketing Officer at FrontStream. As the Chief Marketing Officer, Mark oversees operations of the marketing and product management areas of FrontStream. Mark is a pioneer of online and peer-to-peer, or as we like to refer to it, people-to-people fundraising. For over 20 years, he has been an expert in online marketing, fundraising, social media, and business development. Mark also served on the ePhilanthropy Foundation's Board of Trustees from 2005 to 2007. And welcome here to the Nonprofit Coach, Mark Sutton.
Ted, thank you. Really appreciate being back on the show. It's great to be here.
And of course, Mark, you have the distinction of having been the very first guest on the Nonprofit Coach all the way back at the beginning of this show.
I remember it well, and it's incredible to see how the show has grown, and I think it's really there's so much happening in this space that I can see the need and the reason why people really gather around a show like this.
Yeah, it's and now of course we have hundreds of podcasts available for those in the nonprofit sector who want to learn from the very best, like yourself, here on the Nonprofit Coach. So, Mark, you have, as the introduction shared, been on the forefront of online fundraising, social media, basically all use of the internet and digital media for nonprofit organizations. Let's start out, before we get into sort of all the things I want to discuss with you today, and just tell us where you are now and a little bit about your company, FrontStream.
Sure. So FrontStream it's really an interesting place to be in this space right now. It's brought together a number of products and brands that I think many of your listeners may know very well or may use, and it's come together through acquisition of First Giving, which I started back in 2003, Artez, which I was president of for 5 years, both in the online fundraising space, GiftWorks, which is a terrific donor management system that is used by thousands and thousands of nonprofits of all different sizes. Bidding for Good, which is the leading online auction, scale, and event management platform in the nonprofit sector, and also Truist, which is an employee payroll giving and workplace giving company. So over the last 5 years, these companies have come together under FrontStream. And one of the things that we're really proud to talk about is over the past year we've been working really diligently to bring all of these products together as part of a single platform, one common platform. And in early April, we launched and announced Panorama, which is the platform that brings all of these services together as part of one common platform.
And that just helps nonprofit organizations be more efficient in their use of these tools, and being able to not have to perhaps manage multiple relationships, but be able to do all of that on one platform.
That's really right. And I remember back to the early days of starting First Giving, and even on the ePhilanthropy Foundation board, where these tools were just starting to come into play for a lot of nonprofits, and nonprofits would maybe have one or two different services. And now if you take a look at what a nonprofit is doing, they might have one service which they use for donor management, something else for peer-to-peer. They might use another service for their donate button. They might do another service for online auctions. They might do something else for grant management. And so what you start to get into is, through all this proliferation of point solutions, it's very difficult to know how to use them all, to get all the data into one common place. And then once you do, even knowing is the John Smith who bid on this auction the same person as the John Smith who gave to the capital campaign over here. So it really more of the greater proliferation of point solutions caused its own issues, and so bringing everything together is really aimed at simplifying the solution set for nonprofits, but then also giving them a clear picture and a clear reporting on their constituents.
10 years ago, you and I worked on a very important project that still has relevance today. And I wanted to just remind our listeners that you are one of the authors in People-to-People Fundraising. And I'm holding up the book here for those watching on Facebook, and providing the link to be able to find the book over on Amazon, over on Facebook, as well as the link to FrontStream today. Your chapter, this book, truly sort of cutting edge at the time, but still very relevant today in terms of a baseline for those starting in the industry, those that are trying to understand and make sense of social media, what at the time we called Web 2.0 for charities. Your chapter is entitled How Individual Supporters Can Use Online Fundraising to Make a Difference. Wow, that is still a very relevant topic. Why don't you bring us up to date?
Yeah, absolutely. So the walk, rides, runs, the marathon teams, the polar plunges are still growing very strong. We're seeing lots of other types of events creeping, and there's events like the Tough Mudder or the Spartan races, which are more endurance type events, are becoming popular for fundraisers. And then we're also seeing more kind of in the way of crowdfunding, which is just individuals stepping forward, looking to do good for a cause that they care about. And so this is kind of a driver that's become a very powerful component of peer-to-peer and getting people involved. A lot of the drivers continue to remain similar to what we put together in that book. 10 years ago, it's all about the ask. It's all about the storytelling. I've recently, in some of the personal fundraising that I've done over the last several years, I've really kind of dug in and done some of the analysis just to, kind of, and I can go through just some of what I discovered, kind of what worked, how do you go about raising a certain amount of money, and it's very formulaic. I still think that the common, one common theme is helping people kind of overcome the fear, the apprehension of becoming a fundraiser and looking to make it easy. I think that the other thing that's really different than when that chapter was written is what's going on in the world of social media and just the degree to which individuals can more easily connect with friends. And so what I found in my fundraising is that the social media piece really augments the other aspects of my fundraising. Email is still a very strong component of it. That's how I get out to a lot of the people in my network, but they see what I'm doing on Facebook predominantly, a little bit on Twitter, and some on Instagram, and it just reminds them of what I'm doing. And I've seen that have a very positive influence as well.
And bringing all those tools together, and of course, now these tools are no longer new, but I think still a little bit difficult for folks to understand exactly how they all work together or can work together and bring success. Before we sort of talk about that aspect of integration or not integration or how you time that kind of success, let's talk about compliance. Let's talk about regulations. Let's talk about the difference of a tax-deductible donation versus a contribution that may not be deductible. Tee that up, and I'll chime in on that. But I think it's an issue that has been sort of under the surface, perhaps, but is even more relevant, I think, in the internet space.
Yeah, I think it really is. You're right, Ted. And, it's just because money can be moved from point A to point B doesn't necessarily qualify it as a tax-deductible donation. So I think as you're looking at giving to a 501c3 organization, and if you're giving directly to the organization, and many of the services that are out there kind of enable the funds to go directly to the organization, they are able to issue a tax receipt. And so, while in peer-to-peer, much of the motivation for giving lies around, Ted, me helping you do your event, the tax deductibility is still an important piece of this. Sometimes where it gets a little grayer is maybe I'm not giving to a 501c3 organization. Maybe I'm giving to a cause that is charitable in nature, but not a charity, and so that would be a situation perhaps where it's not deductible. I think the other thing, as you think about the way some of the crowdfunding has come along, the funds do need to go directly to the nonprofit organization, and that is really one of the key triggers for it being a tax-deductible donation, as opposed to it going into somebody's PayPal account that then goes to the nonprofit.
Right, and I think sort of unpacking all of that for folks is that there's a world of difference for an individual or someone who just decides to maybe do good and raise money for charity, to say, I am now raising money for charity, I will send that money to charity. What I think some folks don't understand is that actually could become taxable income to the person who's collecting it, who then is turning around and perhaps earning a tax deduction for that full amount, as opposed to each individual who contributed being able to receive a tax deduction because it's an individual receiving that money, not the charity directly, as opposed to perhaps a service like yours that might be either working with a donor advised fund that can then accept all the contributions and disperse them to charities, or it might have individual contracts with individual charities and therefore can represent them and can tax receipt on their behalf, so each individual then can earn the tax deduction. And all of those different models are A, possible, B, can be done in a regulatory compliant way, but because oftentimes I think folks think that giving to charity is the same no matter how I do it. Oftentimes someone can contribute and maybe not have the tax deduction that they think they should get or that they should have gotten, or they're just completely unaware of the regulatory compliance that does oversee the charitable sector, and therefore sort of get themselves into a position that they weren't looking to get into.
Exactly right.
Yeah. So back to your chapter and sort of all these issues of sort of cutting edge strategies, data, techniques. You had mentioned email and social media, how they work together. I think certainly over the years there has been maybe a hope at sort of a silver bullet. If I just do this, money comes pouring in. I think what most of us have learned, and those who have been at this for a while know, is that doesn't exist, but that you can be hugely successful if you utilize techniques and strategies and platforms that have a track record of success. What would that look like?
So what I found to be really effective, and you're right, there's not a silver bullet to this. It's what I found is that it's multiple channels and multiple asks. So, putting my hat on as a fundraiser, and over the last number of years, I've run an event here in the Boston area, Cape Cod, and I raised over $3,000 each time, and really kind of broke down the science of how to do it. And it was very much of a numbers game for me. I found that my average donation was somewhere in the mid $50 range. And I also found this, so you can kind of figure out to raise $1,000, $2,000, $3,000, $500, how many donations you need. The average donation, it'll vary a little bit, event by event. Typically what we see is that if it's more endurance type event, take a marathon, for example, you might find the donations skewing slightly higher, where if it's, a walk or something like that, or a short event, sometimes the average amount will skew lower. But the fundamentals still exist in terms of understanding how many donations you might need. For me, I mentioned email was kind of the anchor. It's how I connect with a lot of my social network. I also found that it's more of a direct ask to an individual rather than just a posting on Facebook, which I did a lot of as well. So what I did is I actually cast a very broad net with the email, and I found LinkedIn was an invaluable resource for me in terms of getting the email. So what I discovered many people.
But let's stop there.
Yeah, go ahead.
Why do you think that was the case, and what lesson could be learned from that?
Do you mean with the LinkedIn in particular?
LinkedIn. Yeah, LinkedIn in particular.
So here's what I did with LinkedIn. So with LinkedIn, I've been gathering connections, over many, many years. I think at this stage I probably have over 800 connections. And what LinkedIn, they offer a feature that lets you get access to all the emails for all your contacts. So you can basically get access to all your contacts in sort of a spreadsheet type form, if you will. And many of your contacts will have, here's my current email address on there. So it tends to be the personal email address that doesn't change quite as much. So what I was able to do is, rather than kind of go one by one sending in LinkedIn messages, I was actually able to go and make sure that I had the most up-to-date email address for all the people that were in my network and connected to me. And so in sending out the emails, the next question I had, or dilemma really, was who should I send these to, who shouldn't I send these to? And of course on LinkedIn there's some people that you look at and maybe you don't recognize at all. You met them at a conference years ago and you have a very weak connection, if any at all. But what I found is that I was also able to get email addresses for people I had worked with 15 or 20 years ago. High school friends, college friends, people that I had a good relationship with, but it maybe was it was a little older. And what I was really surprised by, I literally remember sitting there with my finger over the button saying, should I send an email out to this person? I said, why not? I'll send it out. And I got donations. I was absolutely astounded by the number of people from your past where you had a relationship, they just like to hear from you. They like to know what you're up to. They like the reconnection. They're very happy to contribute some amount. So I think that one of the lessons that I really took away from this was don't just look at the people you, let's say, are currently working with, or your current neighbors, or of course your family and friends. You can extend much deeper beyond that to the people that you've had relationships with throughout your life.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. But let's go back to some of the early messages. Again, holding up the book People to People Fundraising. The title itself speaks to what you're talking about right now, and what so much of FrontStream and others are helping nonprofits is this notion of how do you help facilitate people connecting to people. And the message that you just shared, one personal example of those who have agreed to or have chosen to link to you on LinkedIn, provide you with an opportunity for you as a person to connect with other people. But why does that work? What's the missing link for some folks who are trying to fundraise from people they don't know?
What I found is it is about the connection. It's also about the ask. In a lot of cases, the way I made the ask, both in email and on social media, was really just an update. Here's what I'm doing. Wanted to let you know that this is what I'm doing. This is what I'm supporting, and I would love your help. And in email, that was a very clear call to action. But I also, in putting it out on social media, and I think that this is one of the things that complements what was written in that chapter, Ted, is, for me, it was putting it out there, just letting people knowing what I was doing. It was truly an update. And what I found is that people were like, oh, great, congratulations, great work that you're doing this. It also kind of tied together sort of the multi-channel ask between people who I had maybe sent an email to, and it just went off the bottom of the screen and was forgotten about, to somebody saying, oh, yeah, Mark's doing such and such. So what I found is that kind of the multi-channel approach, not necessarily a hard ask. And I think this is where a lot of people get quite nervous, and rightfully so, in terms of asking friends and family and coworkers to support them. I think if you take the approach, and I think that this is generally where I've seen things going in development and fundraising in general, it's letting people know what you're doing. Then when you make the ask at some point, people are much more inclined to give. But if it's really in the frame of updating, here's what I'm doing, people love to be in the know and be updated. And I found that translates not only at the peer-to-peer level, but also at the organizational level as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and again, it's people connecting with people. It's as you said, updates to things that you are doing, things that matter to you. And I think that's what one of the messages that this show really tries to help nonprofits focus on. And I often feel like people can hear the message but not necessarily understand the message, is that it's connecting with those people who have connections. And that sort of goes all the way back to sort of the basic tenets of fundraising. If you were doing any sort of campaign, a major gift campaign, an annual campaign, the best way for you to succeed is to find those people who know people, those people who are willing to use their connections on behalf of the charity. And that's exactly what you're doing, is these people know you, they know who you are. Seeing what you're doing, they may have interest in giving, they may not have interest in giving. You're not pushing them, but you're giving them the opportunity. But it is you using your reputation, you using your connections on behalf of a particular charity. And I think that for online, whether it's crowdfunding, whether it's people fundraising, whether it's social media, however you want to call it, all of those concepts are exactly the same. They succeed because people know people and they connect with people.
That's exactly right, and I think it's really nurturing those relationships as well too. So, it's the people that you've had relationships with, so on a peer-to-peer level. But I also see this applying again more generally at the organization level. I mean, one trend, just to kind of bring in a parallel in the corporate workplace giving side of things, we're seeing a strong emphasis towards volunteerism and non-giving engagement amongst employees, and it really is about building the relationship so that when there is an ask or when there's a giving campaign, people feel that sort of teamwork, that connection, and they're more likely to give. So I think that these fundamentals of the engagement piece pertain not only at the peer-to-peer level, and that makes a lot of sense to all of us because we all know the relationships that we've got, but then I think it also applies to us professionally as fundraisers or CSR professionals, where it's not just jumping right to the ask, it's the engagement piece. And I think that this is where the multi-channel piece comes in, and this is really where I think that we've seen a lot of the success around social media, and it's been very hard, I understand, to try to quantify the benefit of social media. I think that we've gotten much better at it. You can see kind of referral codes and sort of see the impact that social is having, but I think that there's this connection and this building the relationships and the engagement. It's harder to measure, but it's vitally important, not only at the peer-to-peer level, but also at the organizational level as well.
Mm-hmm. What tips do you have for maybe benchmarking or having our listeners have a sense of when they're being successful or when to make a change or when to try something new?
I think the time to try things is always. I mean, I find that, my role as a marketer. And, if I'm not trying something new, I feel like, that's sort of a red flag for me. It doesn't have to be big things necessarily. Many of you have heard the concept of, A/B testing. We're testing, different messages on the website and what, is above the fold, what's below. And so I would say in terms of trying new things, that I feels like is at the top of the list, whether it's new techniques with existing media that you've got, or trying something that's completely new. If you're not using Instagram or some other medium, starting to try those, jump in and get your feet wet. I think that also understanding, so sort of transition more to the measurement. I think that this is something that FrontStream as an organization, we've spent quite a bit of time on just understanding really what those key drivers are. And I think that it's one of those things as you think about what the key metrics are for your particular organization. Of course, dollars raised is probably one, number of donors, but are there other types of metrics, engagement style metrics that you might start to measure as well and report on? It could be number of social media engagements, number of social media followers. All of these are kind of clues or indicators about how you're growing your overall breadth of engagement.
Mm-hmm. And setting some goals for that and setting some strategies in place to get there. Mark, we're going to take just a real quick break. I want to come back and I want to talk about how do you set some of those goals. Again, how do you look at maybe your own trends? How can you learn from others? What are resources that are available? And we'll be right back after this quick break.
Have you ever wished you could take back an email you sent to the wrong person? Or have that nagging feeling that your confidential message was forwarded without your consent? Do you sometimes email sensitive data even though you know most email isn't secure? And we all have, because we're busy, and because in the world of email, there are no takebacks. Until now. Introducing Virtru, the simple way to send and receive secure email with confidence. Virtru is easy to install and use, and it works with your favorite email programs like Gmail, Outlook, Yahoo, MacMail, and more. When you hit the Send Secure button, your email is encrypted before it leaves your computer or smartphone. And even better, you can revoke a message at any time. You decide whether a message can be forwarded by recipients. You can track where your message is forwarded, and more. Download Virtru today and start sharing with confidence, because everyone deserves digital privacy and security without hassle. We
want to just remind you again that this is our last live show for the first part of the year. We will then be on summer hiatus through September 12th, and then we will come back live. You can find all of our podcasts at tedhart.com. You can catch up on those over the summer.
Remember, our podcasts and archives are always available 24 hours a day at tedhart.com. Click on radio links. If you're listening live today, the phone lines are open. Call in and ask a question by dialing 347-324-3080. Now, back to the Nonprofit Coach with Ted Hart.
And we're live here with Mark Sutton, who is the Chief Marketing Officer at FrontStream. And Mark, before we went on break, we were talking about sort of setting goals and beginning to develop a program that can be meaningful for a nonprofit organization, for our listeners. Let's continue down that path in terms of you were sharing some of your personal experiences and some of the lessons that you were able to validate by reaching out to your contacts, colleagues, friends, family, using LinkedIn, where you were able to reach out to them. But you were making the case that this was not a hard sell, and that you think part of the not a hard sell is part of the way that you are actually successful online. Talk to us a little bit more about that.
Well, what I realized in understanding how many donations I was going to need, I did realize that there were people that had given to me in the past, people that I knew would give to me, but for some reason or another, they didn't respond to my first post, they didn't respond to my first email. And I understand. There's just such an overwhelming amount of email that hits our inbox, and posts on Facebook and Instagram that it's easy to miss things. And so strategically, I understood that it wasn't going to be just one ask. I probably wouldn't get there if I thought about, okay, I send out this many emails and here's how many people responded. So I knew that it was probably going to be 2 to 4 asks, and depending on some years I got started with my fundraising a little bit sooner, and I did 4 updates, and other years I was a little closer to the event and I did 2 updates, or 3 updates rather. And so for me, it was recognizing that I was going to take more of an update approach. Here's what I'm doing. Here's who I'm doing it for, and why I'm doing it for this cause, and here's how you can help. And so just if you'd like to, you can help support my efforts. I'm trying to raise this amount of money. So that was kind of the technique that I used, and the approach I took was that it wasn't going to be the hard asks, but it was going to be more, here's almost tracking, I have decided to do this. Hey, thank you so much. I'm halfway to my goal. I couldn't have done it without all you people, and sort of thanking everybody. And even the people who hadn't yet given sort of got this thank you email, said, oh, yeah, I forgot to give to him. I wanted to. But through all of it, and then also as I got closer, hey, I'm at my goal. Thank you very much. And then, right before the event, like the day of the event, I'm getting ready to run this today. And, I'm so excited that and I want all of you to feel part of it. Here's a picture, and I'll put it up on Facebook. So it was really more just about sharing kind of what I'm doing. And I think that there was a genuine interest. And it's one of those things where I'd even see people, after the fact that I hadn't really kind of been in close contact with them, say, oh, I saw you were doing that. It sounds like a great thing you've been doing. So I feel like the lesson here is kind of that, more engagement style versus the perhaps older school, just a series of regimented asks, I think really sets up the ask and develops the relationship.
And doesn't that really recognize and maybe respect the difference between, one of the things that we say in the People Fundraising book is that email is not just electronic direct mail. And isn't this really the divergence of sort of the tried and true direct mail letter where you are making an ask and you're hoping that they're going to give, where social media, there are more touch points. It's a softer sell over time. And as you're pointing out, it's really less about the ask than it is updating your activity and then giving people an opportunity to become part of that interaction with you because they know you, as opposed to give to this charity.
That's right. And I think that when I take a look at the way I use both, email is where I was making the asks, even though it was a softer ask, here's the link. And on Facebook, it was typically, here's more about my progress. And I was just conscious about maybe being even a little bit softer on the ask, although I did include a link to my page so people could come see what I was doing, but it wasn't a please donate. And that was just my personal preference. And it did seem to work.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, this is your personal experience looking at it from your professional work and advice from, front stream and working with clients. Is this validating what you know to be true, the advice that you're giving, the advice that our listeners can take away today?
I think it is. I think that what we're seeing now is the fundraising effort it's really a reflection of the individual. And you said it earlier on very well, Ted, which is like this, this is somebody stepping up. They're putting their own personal reputation not on the line, but they're leveraging their personal relationships. And so I think that the things to consider there are just making sure that they've got the tools that reflect them very well. Tools that make it easy for them to connect with their different social networks, whether it's on email or connect with Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and also the tools that they use, that they're modern, that they're mobile friendly. All of these things make a big difference in terms of, when I send out an ask, it's sort of a reflection of me. So I think that this is something for organizations to consider, that what you're asking them to do is really, reach out to their networks and making sure that all the way around that it is something that is a positive reflection on the individual.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right, and to the extent, so then it becomes the charity's role or responsibility in the overall operation to be inspiring action, to providing tools that allow people to make those asks, to, again, holding up the book here because I like the title so much, People-to-People Fundraising. Because if that, as you're saying, is sort of the bedrock of what works online, then it's incumbent upon nonprofits not to be thinking about just how many asks I can make as a charity, but how many people can I inspire to make asks on my behalf? What kind of tools do I provide that are easy for them to use to do exactly what I want them to do, what I need them to do, and that is to reach out to the people that they know.
I think that's exactly it. I think that the other thing we've seen is that there's kind of consistently, I think there's sort of 4 buckets of fundraisers. So anybody out there that's run a fundraising event, it's almost every single event we see, it's how do you manage this flock of fundraisers that you've now got? And, really it's you're sort of forced to manage them as a whole. I've got 500 walkers or I've got 50 polar plungers. But really what you need to do is try to manage them in units of one. So this is an area that we focused on, more recently, which is to provide automated coaching tips, recognizing what people have done or what people haven't done, to sort of give them tips. If you think about, going back to the LinkedIn analogy I use, like if any of you whoever use it, say your profile is 73% of the way done. And it's like, well, what else do I need to do? You need to upload your picture, kind of thing. So, taking that same kind of approach where the 4 categories that I referred to, you have some people who register, and 50% of people, here's a stat, across pretty much every single event that we run, 50% of people never become active fundraisers. And there's a whole variety of reasons for that. Some people just want to sign up and do the walk, or sometimes it's a little child and it's not appropriate for them to become a fundraiser, but a lot of times it's apprehension. So providing rules in place to help get people over that hump. Send out your first email. The thought of trying to raise $1,000 can be sort of overwhelming, but it's send out that first email, get your first couple of donations. So that's the first group, the people that don't necessarily activate. The next group is people who get those first few donations, and then they don't quite know what to do next. Maybe they just send out that one appeal, and you need to manage and coach them differently. The next group is the people that kind of get it. They get right up pretty close to their.
Also,
yep.
Mark, I just wanted to, but also have appropriate expectations, right? And in terms of that's okay. If that's the engagement that particular person feels most comfortable with. That's part of the overall puzzle, but have appropriate expectations in terms of how do you bring the entire program to success.
I think that's exactly right. I think that you'll have individuals in each of these different quadrants, if you will, and it's totally understandable that they're there, but it's helping to provide them tools so that they can feel as though they're giving tips and ideas and things that say, oh, okay, maybe here's the next step for me. What you may find is the people who are, and then the next one is people who get really close to their goal. And then they start hitting their goal, and it's giving them the idea. Okay, don't stop at $1,000. Why don't you raise your goal to $1,500 and keep on going? And you'll find people who just, because you give them some of these ideas, they're able to stretch. And then the last group are the people that you just don't need to worry about. They're out there, they're off the charts on the other side in terms of their fundraising, and they've just got it all figured out. So I think that one of the real important points here, and I think that as technology has evolved, we're getting down so that we're able to manage, at that unit of one more easily than we were able to years ago, where it was, you'd send out an email to all of your fundraisers or all of your team captains or all the people who just hit goal, and you have to send them out one shot to various big chunks, where right now some of the coaching tools are able to coach you a little differently, Ted, than me, based upon when I've started, how much I've raised, if I haven't downloaded things like the app, or if I hadn't posted out to Facebook. I think that really becomes a very empowering tool for all of the event managers out there who it's really hard to try to manage the logistics and the fundraising for everybody in the event.
Well, and that's part of the overall picture too. Again, back to realistic expectations, but also what you're sharing now is based on now many years of experience, as opposed to that sort of real in time coaching that's individual to the way that you're interacting with the program wasn't possible a few years ago, simply because there wasn't enough data that would actually allow that to be done in a helpful way.
I think that's exactly it. I think that's really, the data-driven types of systems where it's not just tools that enable a fundraiser to manually configure things, but it's a way that the tools themselves understand behavior of the users and can anticipate what's needed. And, it's one of the fundamental reasons, back to the Panorama platform that I mentioned at the beginning of the show. It's not just to make all the tools easier in one place and to get all the data flowing easily into a donor management tool. That's certainly key parts of it. But I think where we see the real benefit is to start to understand the behavior of an individual and maybe the capacity of an individual in a very intelligent fashion. So, for example, if we knew that somebody bid $10,000 at the gala auction that you had this spring, and then you're going to make an annual appeal, or when they come to your donation page 4 months from now, you probably wouldn't necessarily want to display the $25, $50, $75, $100 ask amount. You might want to start, $100, $500, $1,000, or some other logic along those lines. So it's trying to gain a picture of your constituents' likes, tendencies, behaviors, so that you can really help present them with the right content, the right offer, the right engagement at the right time. And, think about any of you who shop on Amazon, which is probably all of us at this stage, where you go there and it sort of knows you. It sort of knows what kind of things to recommend or suggest, and it's uncanny. And so I think that the same opportunity exists in fundraising, where understanding what people are doing, what they like, what their preferences are, I think helps and presenting that and capturing that in a smart fashion is what a single platform ultimately will drive at, and that's kind of the vision that we're looking to put forward with the Panorama platform.
Yeah, so part of, and again, it's using the best of the web, best of social media, in that each and every campaign benefits from the lessons learned from the prior campaign.
Exactly.
And each and every donor, if they come back and they're utilizing those tools, they're familiar with those tools, they don't have to necessarily be the professional fundraiser and remember all those lessons, they're going to be reminded of those lessons. You're going to share, maybe who their best donors were, and share, some of the lessons that they learned from their last campaign, because they wouldn't be coming back if they didn't want to be successful. But it gives them an opportunity to do it in a very personal way, and to do it, as you said, in sort of a low, soft sell sort of way, because again, they're reaching out to their friends and their families and their colleagues, and they don't want to necessarily be seen as begging for money, or necessarily doing a hard sell to people that they really care about, even though they want to support a charity that they care about.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. So thinking in those terms, and looking at the amount of time that we have left, what I'd like to do is ask you to sort of break down, and thinking of our audience, they're coming into summer. We're going to have a break here on this show. We're going to be coming back in the fall, and that's going to be, go time for our listeners. So those who are listening to us now, those who will be listening to podcast, what should they be doing now to prepare and plan for a successful end-of-year campaign?
That's a great question. And I think that, first of all, you're right to bring up end of the year right now. And I feel like when people get back from summer and you're sort of kicking off and you're into early fall, the scramble is already upon you. So I think that this is a great opportunity to plan what you're going to be doing, what your campaigns look like. December, if that's kind of the appropriate timing for you. The other thing that people are factoring in as well is Giving Tuesday. And I think that some organizations have started to see some good success with that as a catalyst. And I think if that's something that you'd like to try, or your organization is into, it's actually a very easy type of program to put in place. It just requires a little bit of forethought. And I think that this is the right time to go about doing it. It's a one-day event, setting up typically a mail campaign, a social media campaign, driving people to a specific Giving Tuesday page where you've got a goal set, I think is one tactic that we've seen more organizations look to employ as well. I think that the other thing, just in terms of year-end giving in general, is going to be to think of a multi-channel approach. And I think that this is something that many of you have probably already put in place, but I think as you think about not just the forms that you've got on your website, but you will likely be sending out letters in many cases, emails. Think about what the tie-in is with your Facebook and how you do that. I think that another area that some people look for as well, and we've seen more activity on, is around online advertising. It's something that people have started to try, specifically nonprofits. So it's targeting people with Facebook advertisements. You can do the same thing on Instagram. You can also do the same sort of thing on LinkedIn and, of course, Google. But I think that that's something that we've seen many of the organizations that we work with starting to try. It tends to be around events, awareness months, and possibly year-end giving as well, to try to identify who the profile of your, the constituents that really gravitate to your organization. And back, Ted, to your point earlier about, what to try, that might be something to give some thought to, and try one of those channels to see if it works.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and just since you raised it, and I'm so glad that you did, Giving Tuesday this year is November 28th. And I think that again, planning now for what will your Giving Tuesday appeal be, and that's a terrific time to give. I always thought, even before Giving Tuesday, that Thanksgiving is a uniquely good time to give thanks and to give people an opportunity to give thanks. Obviously, holiday time is often a traditional time, but of course, people celebrate holidays in a lot of different ways. So, holidays for one donor might not be necessarily the holidays for others. So, maybe Thanksgiving is even an easier time to make that appeal. But the planning has to happen now. What is the outreach? How, when? What are the tools that are going to be used? And we just have a few minutes left, but can you talk a little bit about what our listeners should keep in mind in terms of perhaps the interaction of online and offline?
I think that that's a really important one as well. I think that offline, I think gets dialed back in some cases, in a lot of cases, but I think in other ways, offline. And if I take offline to mean, not just letters and printed matters, which it certainly does, but I think also just the social gatherings, the galas, those types of things. I think that those events, I think those are all, in my mind, offline as well. I think that it's tremendously valuable to keep doing those. I think in some odd way, some of the offline, mailings maybe have prevalence where everything seems to come to us in our inboxes, in our email inboxes, and it becomes increasingly difficult to get through to people in their inbox. Might not be a bad time to, go back to some of those printed materials. So I think that it's one of those things where,
interesting,
with the advent of all these online tools,
so much has moved online and so much is email that a well-placed direct mail now almost has more prominence. Whereas a few years ago we were talking about getting out of people's postbox and into their inbox. Perhaps maybe there is a rebalancing that needs to take place, and maybe this is the season to think about that, and don't throw the pendulum too far back the other way either.
Completely agree.
Yeah. So, Mark, we just have about 3 minutes left. I'd like to accomplish two things. Your final advice for our listeners, again, thinking of the time of year and planning and what they should be doing now, but also how can our listeners reach you?
Well, terrific. I mean, first to get the housekeeping out of the way, people can reach me. I work for FrontStream, and our website is just frontstream.com. So you can go there and learn more about what we do. You can reach me personally. You're welcome to email me, and it's mark.sutton@frontstream.com. I'm also on Twitter, Mark Sutton at Mark Sutton, rather. So you can reach me either place. Connect with me on LinkedIn. You'll find me. And in terms of just the things to think about for the year end, I guess I'm a big advocate of trying some different things, and there's the tools out there are so easy and readily accessible. I would say try something new, whether it's A/B testing something that you're already doing, trying a new channel. Let's get Instagram going, or it's let's set up that Giving Tuesday page or that Awareness Month page that we haven't really kicked off yet. I think those all make a lot of sense.
Yeah, terrific. Mark, thank you for being our guest again, for updating your chapter and your advice from People to People Fundraising. We have posted your web link over on Facebook, which you can find at facebook.com/Ted Hart. That is our show, final show for the beginning of the year. We will be back on September 12th live. Don't forget that you can catch up on all of our podcasts on iTunes or at tedhart.com. Mark, thank you for being my guest again today.
Thank you, Ted.
You've been listening to the Nonprofit Coach Radio Show with Ted Hart. Tell all your friends to check out our production schedule and download our iPod and iPad-friendly podcast at tedhart.com. Thanks for listening to the Nonprofit Coach.
Hola mi gente, Rosalind Sanchez here from He Said, Ella Dijo. And although I like drama in my telenovelas, when it comes to real life, I prefer a drama-free casa. Thanks to Fabuloso. Its remarkable lavender scent lingers like a longing glance. And with 2 times more active ingredients to take the drama out of any mess, you'll be shouting, gracias. Fabuloso's 2 times concentrated formula provides 2 times more active cleaning ingredients versus non-concentrated Fabuloso Original. Use as directed.
It's Ryan Seacrest here. People always say it's good to unwind, but that's easier said than done. The exception, Chumba Casino. They actually make it easier done than said, or at least the same. Chumba Casino is an online social casino with hundreds of casino-style games like slots and blackjack. Play for fun. Play for free for your chance to redeem some serious prizes. Sign up now and collect your free welcome bonus at ChumbaCasino.com. Sponsored by Chumba Casino. No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus terms and conditions apply.